in San Francisco. My name's Andrew Farago. I'm the curator of the Cartoon Art Museum, and I'll be kind of ringleading this conversation. Yeah. But when you're freaking Christy out by moving your chair.
Oh. Sorry.
Do you want to go closer? All right.
We're all friends.
But yeah, thanks for coming out. We've got a fun event tonight, and in about a month we're going to have all the artists from our West Coaster exhibition, so from up and down the coast of California all the way up to Oregon. So we're going to have all 7 artists, including Tom Toro and Mike Toohey and Eric Drucker and Zareen Chowdhury. So a fun group of people are going to be here Friday, December 12th. 2 days later, Bobby Podesta from Pixar, one of your buddies, will be here with his debut graphic novel, North for the Winter, and we may have a guest appearance from Santa Claus, so we're gonna have fun with that one. But we're here tonight to level with Daredevil, basically. And so I'm joined by Chris Ryall, who's the author of the Daredevil Born Again. From Marvel Age Comics, we're joined by Scott Morse, cartoonist, animator, multi-hyphenate, and the legendary Steve Leialoha. He's worked on every one of your favorite comic book series at some point. And
Even Daredevil.
But yeah, I think we'll start with Chris, and I think what brought you to Born Again?
So I thought I'd start with a 20-minute reading of no. So this line of books is a thing that Bloomsbury just launched this year. Bloomsbury is publisher of other similar lines of sort of fan/expert explorations of music and movies. So they have a line called 33 1/3 that is looking at, hiring rock journalists to write about their favorite live album or favorite best concert or something like that. They do the same with films books as well. And so they partnered with Marvel this year to launch this Marvel Age Comics line. And they reached out to me and a few others and asked us to be part of their launch. And so they basically asked me to pitch on what I would want to do if they handed me 30,000 words to write about anything Marvel related. Said it could be, about favorite character or influential creators or best storyline. And so I had a couple things I pitched to them, but the one I really wanted to do was fortuitously the one they picked, which was write about Daredevil Born Again, which to me is just kind of the high watermark of superhero comics. It's long been my all-time favorite superhero storyline, so I was very happy they picked this one. I also kind of hedged my bets by pitching them on this one at a time when I knew they were about to launch a Disney Plus series called Daredevil Born Again. I figured that couldn't hurt my chances, but it was also one I wanted to do, and so I was glad they opted for this one.
Great. And Scott and Steve, you'll both have. I want to hear your perspectives on it. So you, as a fanboy, as a reader, what was your introduction to this storyline?
Oh man, I bought these off the shelf when I was in, I guess I would have been middle school, high school, like that era. At a time when I was aware of who the creators were and what was happening, but also at that ripe age where you're starting to really immerse yourself in heady stories that are coming from a place that nobody knew they were coming from in the 80s, and just got so much out of it. I was telling Chris earlier tonight, I remember buying 227, 228 off the stands, 229 off the stands, and then I would go to the comic shop to get the next issue, and they were sold out. And I ended up, I pulled out my issues last night, my back issues, the ones that I had that I bought when I was reading these, and they had like $2, the $2 sticker on, issue 230, 231, something like that. And I pulled those out, and I'm like, I must have had to buy these a week later or 2 weeks later when they had sold out. Pulled them out, and they were beat to hell. Like the ones that I had to buy after the fact, like one of them was folded in half.
Like
My 227 is pristine. My 228 is pristine. The others are like, what happened to these?
It's probably a
I
subscriber.
didn't do this.
Remember when you subscribed to
It
Marvel
had to have
Company,
been
they were
something.
folded in half.
Yes,
Yeah.
I mean, it could have been, I guess. This would have been in the
Yeah,
South
it-
Bay, like,
Mm.
like I grew up in the Bay Area, so it would have been at R&K Comics or Brian's Books or one of those places down in the South Bay. But yeah, I mean, I bought them and read them basically as they came out and was completely blown away. So when year one launched a year later,
Yeah.
I was well aware of not just who Frank Miller was, but I had become hyper aware of who Mazzucchelli was, who David Mazzucchelli was. Even at that age, that was arresting to see that level of artwork come out and to recognize Frank Miller was cool, but like, who's this Mazzucchelli guy? And it just completely blew me away.
Yeah.
I love that secret language of comics, because you said 227 and all.
Yeah.
Everybody lit up.
Yeah.
And we were grabbing a bite to eat beforehand, and you said 181, and we just nodded. And like you look in the audience, and like, so you know exactly what that.
Yeah.
that
But
means.
just quote random number.
Yeah.
And it's like any 3-digit number might trigger something else. That's great. So Steve, you were doing
I
a lot
was
of work for
working,
Marvel at
I
the
was
time.
working at Marvel when Frank started working on Daredevil. I had met Frank when he was working, learning the ropes, hanging out at Neil Adams Continuity Studios as an assistant, anybody that needed an assistant. The first work of his I actually saw, Jack Abel was inking an issue of, I think it was Daredevil, drawn by Sal Buscema, and it was a layout job, so there was no rendering anywhere, but Frank was, his role was to render up all the rooftop scenes, all the water tanks.
I was gonna say, yeah, add a bunch of water towers, yeah.
And all of that stuff. So he was definitely primed to hop onto that book when the opportunity arose. But when he started on Daredevil, everyone took notice because it was so good. So, I mean, we just watched as the series got better and better, especially when Frank started writing it himself. So,
I did always find that curious though, like Frank got all this credit for making Daredevil into something more than it was. You know, he was darker, more serious, brought in ninjas. But I always felt like Roger McKenzie didn't get enough credit for the way he sort of turned the book from, it always felt like adult Spider-Man to me, like visually impaired adult Spider-Man. You know, the character didn't seem that different, but when McKenzie took over, it had more of a crime focus, and Klaus Jansson's inks, I think, sort of moved it darker, and so he just always felt to me like one of the unsung guys that really started to position Daredevil in a way that I think played to Frank's strengths when he came on.
he did bring a level of seriousness to
Yeah.
the title, which previously was not everyone, the general fandom had sort of written off Daredevil prior to that. And then actually Klaus Janson came aboard as the regular inker, working over Bob Brown. So when Frank came aboard, it was just a perfect match. And it just went from there. And Frank did want to write it himself, but he got the opportunity when scripts got late, and he hopped in and offered to do one, and it went really well.
Yeah.
So,
I'll get back to you when you first caught up with the storyline, but Born Again, were you,
Well,
in the industry, were you reading?
yeah,
Daredevil as it came
I
out?
must admit, when you're working on a regular title at Marvel, you don't really have time to, at that point in time, I forget what year that.
So 85 is when this launched.
85.
Yeah.
I can't remember what I was working on in '85.
You probably did that X-Men annual right around then.
Could be, sounds about right.
Yeah.
Secret Wars 2.
Secret Wars
was
2.
in there
Yeah.
somewhere.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, I think both those were 85 also.
So I wasn't following a whole lot of the
Yeah.
books, but I was following anything that Frank was doing.
Now, did you
I
guys
can't remember if Alan Moore had popped out by that point. I think he had.
Yeah, yeah.
I I mean, the first I noticed of Alan Moore was when he hopped onto Swamp Thing, and then made it a point to find everything I could that he had done.
So
So
in
between
Marvel,
him and Frank, it was heady times.
yeah. Well, so I was curious about, like, in the Marvel offices, was there a buzz whenever there was a Frank Miller issue or a?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. That's,
one way to put it.
yeah.
I just remember Denny O'Neil. Denny O'Neil was the editor,
Yeah.
and he had an approach where he liked to set it up so that he didn't actually have to do anything, which makes sense. Find a writer who's good, find a penciler who's reliable, find an inker, let them do their thing, and he could just sit back and
Take the credit, yeah,
watch
that's,
magic happen.
that's in the editor's job description, yeah.
So, Denny was very happy at that point in time, so. Denny.
So is your story similar to Scott's as far as going to the comic shop and?
Yeah, so I was buying the individual issues. And speaking of 181, which was the big Daredevil, Elektra Bullseye fight to the death, that was my first issue of Daredevil, which is a weird spot to come in, but also it just felt like, oh man, I'm missing something. Like I read my older brother's earlier Daredevil comics, they just didn't do anything for me, but that issue was just, like I couldn't save up enough to get all the back issues as quick as possible. And so like back in '85, there was maybe Marvel Age magazine or something, but
Yeah.
there was very little word on what was coming up in comics. And so when Frank left after 191, it was kind of thing where like it never measured up, it never felt the same without him. And so then you just kind of, I don't know, maybe saw a mention in a letters page or something that Frank was coming back. And he came back for a single issue, I don't know, like 6 months prior to the starting. And then I remember picking up 226, which is like, it's kind of a zero issue to Born Again. And Frank's name was on there as co-writer with Denny O'Neil, and it just felt, you could tell they were kind of like putting things in place for what was to come, but just, I remember seeing Frank's name back on the book and just being so excited that like the Daredevil that I love was maybe coming back. But then you kind of expect the same thing, you know, you're like, I want more ninja, like give me the hand and give me Elektra. And so when he was doing something very different in Born Again, at first you were like, I want the cool ninja stuff. But it made an immediate mark, and it was just so, I don't know, I remember that first page, you know, the first page is Karen Page, which is Matt's old actress girlfriend, and she was like blonde, pretty office assistant, so there was the weird power dynamic of Matt Murdock dating her. But she left years ago and went off to Hollywood to be an actor, and then she was written out of the comics, and then you saw her on the first page of Born Again, and she's strung out, and she's in this dingy motel room in Mexico, and she's desperate for a fix, and the only thing left of value she has is Daredevil's secret identity. She sells that for just a fix of drugs, and I was like, oh my god, this is really weighty. Like, you know, as a young teenager or whatever,
Yeah.
it just felt so mature and adult and like just gripping. And so yeah, I was grabbed right from the start.
And my younger brother and I were probably buying Muppet Babies.
Yeah.
We
Star
weren't
comics were
quite
good
doing
too.
Daredevil
Yeah.
yet, but
There
those
was
were on the rack.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, you would buy both.
Yeah.
Why not?
Right, and yeah, again, like as this was coming out, like were you rushing the newsstand? Were you getting comps in the mail? How were you getting your?
Marvel was very good about sending comps to everybody that worked for them. If you did enough work for them, then they would send you comps. And I was working regularly for them at that point in time, even if I can't remember what it was. But, so yeah. Well, I would actually also go to the local comic book store, which was one of the local comics and comics shops around town, and pick up all my favorite comics since I didn't want to wait. So, I mean, the comps for Marvel always showed up like 3 or 4 weeks after they actually came out. So yeah, I would buy Daredevil regularly and anything from Alan Moore. think Alan came around in '84 or something
Yeah.
like that. I forget what I was buying specifically, but I was buying anything that Frank was doing.
Now, were you aware of Mazzucchelli before?
No, it's
Frank?
completely new. It's also interesting to see the kind of artwork he's done since then.
Yeah.
So he's sort of I wouldn't say an art chameleon, but clearly he has a lot of different styles that he likes to do. So.
I remember noticing him on the Denny O'Neil run of Daredevil. He took over, I don't know, soon after issue 200. And he was inked by Danny Bulanati at the time, who always had a very kind of heavy hand. You know, the artist style was kind of buried under Danny's inks. But every now and then you see this panel where you're like, there's something special about this guy. And I don't know what it is, but it wasn't, you know, he was very new. You know, as a kid, you're like, you assume every comic creator is a mature adult, but he was in his early 20s, you know, doing this stuff. And so every now and then there would be a panel in a Daredevil comic where I'm like, there's something very special about this artist, you know? And then certainly when he started inking his own stuff like a year before Born Again, it's like, oh, this guy's really something special.
Yeah, yeah, and when he inks his own stuff, you can tell that he's owning it in a different way. Like just looking through these again last night, inking what I'm guessing he was doing finishes over Frank's layouts for 227.
At the start, yeah.
Yeah, like those feel like Frank, and it feels like Mazzucchelli tentatively inking over Frank. But by the time you get to 231, 232, you're starting to get these more like shape-driven layouts and shape-driven inks, thicker lines on you know thicks and thins and things that aren't happening on the Frank stuff. Even if like Klaus Janson was inking his stuff, like you get things in thicks and thins, but not the same way that Mazzucchelli was doing it on his own pencils. I didn't realize it until a friend had pointed out to me that like there's two different ways you can draw. Either you're drawing with line or you're drawing with shape. And I feel like, and I never realized that. And he pointed out like I draw with shape, and I totally admit that I draw with shape. Like I think in shapes, I think in volumes. But so many comics artists draw with line. They typically are just trying to think about construction and think about line work. And I feel like shape-driven stuff gives you more volume, gives you more weight, gives you more atmosphere. And I think that's what was sticking out with the Mazzucchelli stuff, especially the second half of this storyline that really started to shine for the first time. That stuff looked different.
It was exciting to see just the evolution of an artist trying to figure out who he is even that early on. It was kind of like with Keith Giffen, where you didn't necessarily know like Munoz or whoever was his influence, but you saw that there was a real evolution in his style. And David's, you can really see it in, it's like from issue 4 to 5 of this run.
Yeah.
Like there becomes a much more angular,
especially on like the Ben.
The Ben Urich.
Yeah. When you see
he is all
shapes
hard
change,
angles.
It's like he's a completely different character design.
Yeah.
In certain sections of the story, and I'm wondering if like he had to have done that intentionally, but like I'm wondering what the like subtext of that was.
And I think you're right, where you can see.
I think Frank was pulling back from doing layouts when he got to where he knew Mazzucchelli didn't need his help.
Yeah.
So, you know, go for it.
Yeah.
You know.
That's interesting. Were there any things like his technical approach that you really responded to? Like,
well, like they were saying, his vision was so complete that I didn't see it as pencil or inker. It was just Mazzucchelli's artwork. Unlike when Klaus does it. Although, I mean, that's because I'm aware of the process, but his stuff is very solid and organic looking.
Did you ever ink Frank? Did you ever have a chance to ink him on anything?
Briefly, once, on a weird cover that was so weird that they never printed it. It was the Scorpion, one of the villains from Spider-Man.
Sure.
I don't remember what it was. Very early in Frank's career when he hadn't quite figured out what he wanted to do.
Yeah. I don't. That one I don't know the issue number, but that was a Peter Parker
Long before
comic. Yeah.
Daredevil even.
You beat Frank by a few years into the.
Yes. I started working at Marvel in 1975. I think Frank started up there in 1978, something like
Yeah.
that. So, making his way in.
So to throw out another number, 1986. This was like a big watershed year. So what was in the what was in the air at the time? What was it about that year when everything just came together?
Well, again, it was Frank and Alan Moore suddenly kicking things up and showing what you could do, and everyone wanted to do that now after that. Also the rise of the independent stuff, Dave Sim and Wendy Pini and
Eastman and Laird.
exactly.
Yeah.
It was a very creative time. I think, when did Jim Lee start working on the X-Men? That might have been around the same time.
And I think it was like 88.
It was 88.
It was later.
Yeah.
When was Image?
91.
Okay, so it
Let's
was a
see.
while in the
Jim
future.
Lee was doing like Punisher War.
But it was-
Yeah, on the jet ski.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's very creative.
I mean, it's funny because now you see, again, like, there was a recent Alan Moore interview where he said he really regrets doing Killing Joke.
I don't blame him for the fact that everyone jumped on him. I always thought it was really amusing that The Dark Knight was set in the future, but everyone loved it so much that it's now the present.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And of course, so many years have gone by that it is the future, so.
That Blade Runner.
It's one of the challenges of continuity that goes back 80 years.
Right.
Well, the wild thing is that these guys did Born Again and Year One in the same year, it was 85, 86, and just that they created like two of the most seminal comic book runs in, in decades, all in the same.
Like within a year.
Yeah.
Frank was on a roll.
Yeah.
What year was Ronin?
82.
82,
But that's always the conversations, like, what's better, Born Again or Year One? And I've always maintained that it's Born Again. But I mean, I certainly get that Year One belongs in that conversation too. And it's like, I don't know how you pick which one's better,
I mean, I feel like Year One is more cohesive just because it was consistently those couple of guys.
Yeah.
And like it was that team.
Yeah.
That full storyline.
Yeah.
The colors changed, the inkers changed, like there were a couple of things, not, well, wasn't really a couple of things, but like colors changed. I wanna say somebody else changed in the lineup as well, but I didn't realize until I went back and looked at issues last night prepping for this, that Mazzucchelli colored 228. And that's the one issue of this storyline that he colored, and it sticks out in such a beautiful pop art way against the others. The colors are like, there's that like hot pink.
Yeah.
Iridescent
Giant
blue,
close-up
kind of
of his
like
face,
giant
yeah.
close, yeah. And it plays out throughout the whole issue as well. And it doesn't, it wasn't informed by the prior issue, and they didn't really follow through with it on the following issues. And it's subtle. I mean, I don't know that, many people would care or would notice. I always use my mom as a barometer. I don't know that my mom would notice, but like, but looking back at them, you can see that like, no, Mazzucchelli colored that. Like, it's a very different aesthetic.
The other thing that's weird is like Year One, to your point, is a much more cohesive, sort of tight story, whereas this gets so weird at the end. There's like 5 issues of this gripping personal story that suddenly they bring in this character Nuke, and he's blowing up the city, and it scales up in such a crazy, sort of out of control way that almost feels like it's its own 2-parter, and Born Again is more of a 5-issue thing, because again, the scale and all of it just changes so drastically. And I mean, it's kind of a cool evolution of like the Kingpin's desperation to finally end the whole Daredevil thing, because he just can't find any other way to do it, even though it was within his means and he just couldn't get out of his own way, really. But those Nuke issues are nutty, compared to the first 5. Anyway, yeah, I like those because everything just blows up in such a wild way.
It's interesting talking about that in story structure sense as well, because you're right, like, those are external stakes for the Kingpin.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
gotta literally go nuclear.
Yeah.
On the situation that he was it pretty isolated, smaller, like, I can handle this
Yeah.
on my own, and now I have to pull out big guns by the end of the story, and it does get so ludicrous.
Yeah, well, like Daredevil says, like, it was a nice piece of work, Kingpin, you shouldn't have signed it. And he just couldn't, like, stop.
Yeah, he
tweaking,
overplayed his
you know?
hand.
Yeah, yeah.
Actually, that made me think of Kyle Baker and Why I Hate Saturn.
Mm.
And that's like a very personal, like, human relationship story throughout, and then it ends with like the lead character's sister pulling out a bazooka and blowing something up. And,
Yeah.
Which is
he was
very
asked about that, and he said,
Yeah.
he said that was like every movie in the '80s. Like it didn't
Mm.
matter.
Oh,
if
yeah.
It was 30 something, or like throughout most of the movie, it's like it always ends with a big explosion. So it's almost an action movie.
Well, Kyle's a good reference for like Mazzucchelli, because he was another guy at the time who was, like, he was a great inker, like, he was doing really cool stuff on like New Mutants over Butch Guys. But then to see the guy that was inking those books then become this just amazing storyteller and cartoonist in his own right without the need for anybody else, like, was just such a cool evolution of his stuff too. I don't know, did you, like, were you seeing Kyle's stuff back in the day?
Oh,
when
yeah,
it was?
I was a big fan of that stuff.
Yeah.
For some reason, I don't know if he was living in San Francisco or not, but Why I Hate Saturn reflected his personal life as well. Somehow he turned it into a
Mm.
action adventure superhero type. Well, I mean, that's Kyle.
Yeah.
And we'll have time for some audience questions too. Let me think.
Anyway, I was just thinking there's a lot of creative energy back in those days.
Yeah.
I know there still is. People are still doing stuff, but it was, well, fun time.
Well, it feels like there was, and correct me if I'm wrong, because like I'm looking at it from the outside in, and you were there for context, and we're asking for context. But like, I feel like there was a lot of opportunity to stretch. Was that because nobody was looking, or because you guys could get away with it? I mean, there was like, and especially with the inking, like there was Sienkiewicz, there was Kyle Baker, there was Bob Camp, there was you.
When Sienkiewicz came aboard, everybody, I use that in quotes, hated his inking.
Yeah.
His scratchy stuff. Some of us loved it. I mean, it's like, well, here's something new. And, you know, Bill was young and soaking up influences like a sponge and putting it out on the page. And he was really into the illustrators at that time, which had not really been a real influence in mainstream comics for a long time. Not since Neil Adams came aboard. That was the last time anything. That particular style happened. But I think part of it is the changing technology, where they started to improve the printing, and suddenly you could get full color stuff. I mean, they had a lot of awful flexographic.
Yeah.
Really bad. But like, Sienkiewicz started doing full color covers. They printed poorly, but he was still doing them. So there was a lot of opportunities popping up at that point in time. People were really excited about being able to try new stuff.
Was that embraced by the people paying the bills, or was that like,
Well,
too bad, this is what you get, and it's due? So you're gonna print it?
Their concern was being able to do it as cheaply as possible.
Okay.
A lot of in-house stuff that didn't quite work. I remember so many different methods of trying to figure out color, blue line stuff, black lines, coloring on stats. They tried everything. But
Well, that's why Sienkiewicz took New Mutants rather than X-Men, right? Because it was a book that didn't have as many eyes on it, didn't have the same sales expectations, so he could experiment more and not
I
face
don't
the
think
same.
it mattered to Bill which book he was working on.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, for him, everything was fair game. But he was trying out all kinds of interesting things. I lived upstairs from Tom Orzechowski, who was the regular letterer on the X-Men.
Yeah.
So I had the opportunity to see all of the X-Men pages coming through. And you could see Bill, like, suddenly deciding to work twice up, which is the old way, as opposed to 1.5 times.
Yeah.
I mean, he's trying out all kinds of different ways to work, different approaches. I remember he was at a studio here, and he dropped by and needed to do some work, so he was working on the New Mutants, the one with the giant bear.
Yeah.
And he got it into his head to draw pages without planning ahead.
Always
All
a
right,
good idea.
here's
Yeah.
panel 1,
Yeah.
here's panel 2, and half the book, he would get 3/4 of the way through the page and come up with a better idea, toss it. It's not the easiest way to work, but,
Although that's how Larry said he always approached G.I. Joe forever. He said, I don't know when I get to the bottom of this page, what's gonna happen at the top of the next page. I'm like, sure you do. You must have some sense, but he said he never, he just wrote page by page without any
you
idea.
do have a general sense of the shape of the story.
Yeah.
but Beyond that,
Larry also said the most hate mail that book ever got was the annual that Michael Golden did with the yearbook.
What?
And Michael Golden, yeah, amazing. But it's just funny that at the time, like, people like Bill and people like Michael, who everybody now respects as just some of the best artists to ever work in comics, at the time, I think because they weren't what fans were used to.
hard to believe they didn't like Michael Golden.
Yeah, but he
Yeah,
said
that's-
everybody just revolted, and I think because a lot of the art on G.I. Joe was a bit more straightforward for those fans, and so Michael was, I guess, too cartoony for their taste, but
I remember he was drawing the Nam, which was
Yeah.
phenomenal.
yeah,
I mean, conceptually, it was brilliant.
Yeah.
for a while, then they
Well,
started bringing in the Punisher.
It was
and-
brilliant until Larry left the book.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, the premise of the book was that they were doing, each issue was a month
in the war, yeah.
in the war.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was very specific.
Yeah,
Once Larry left the book, it just turned into just another war book.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
certainly with Michael Golden drawing it, it was phenomenal.
oh, yeah.
For
You
example.
wrote that up chronologically. I forgot that was chronological.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
he had up through like the Tet Offensive or something, and then after that, he dropped off of it.
Yeah, I think Doug Murray left too,
Yeah, yeah.
and, yeah.
Yeah.
Larry was the editor and Doug.
And Doug was Doug was a
Doug
vet,
was the
right?
writer at the beginning.
Yeah,
But, I could do 30,000 words on
Okay.
G.I. Joe yearbook.
oh, yeah.
Number 2 pretty easily.
Yeah.
We don't wanna get too sidetracked.
Well,
Another.
I was just gonna say, I worked on, just by chance, the 2 issues of G.I. Joe that Larry drew. I always thought he was a very underrated storyteller.
Yeah.
He was really, really solid. He draws really well, too.
Yeah.
So is that book the one you signed the most, like over
I
time
think
conventions?
keep joking that we probably signed every copy that there is.
Is the silent, I figured the silent issue is probably one that people.
I have 2 that you haven't signed,
And they
but I'll
keep
bring them.
reprinting.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Which is fine.
yeah,
I mean, who knew?
yeah,
But I
that-
knew it was special when Larry asked me to work on it, so.
I mean, there are, like, if, I've been asked in the past, like, top 5 comics or whatever, like seminal comics. G.I. Joe 21 and Mazzucchelli stuff. I mean, it's typically Big Man that I'll point to from Rubber Blanket.
oh, yeah.
But these books, especially, but, I mean, to be talking about one of the creators and sitting with another one of the
Yeah,
creators
yeah.
for, that were like part of what made me get into visual storytelling is kind of awesome.
Well, not to just single out all your books, but I was reading Coyote again recently.
Oh, that was
And
fun.
Coyote was one that was one of those when it hit me at the right time when like I needed something more than just the superhero comics I read when I was 5, and so it hit at the perfect time. It
You
just
were
felt
5
like
when kind
no,
of-
I was probably
That's a heady book.
I was probably 10 or 11.
What house did you
But I needed something that felt, I don't know, more advanced than just superhero comics, and that was one that hit me at just the right time to sort of expand your mind on what comics could be.
Well, again, that was when the companies were trying to expand their what they were doing. So again, part of that creative energy that was, Marvel decided to do the Epic line.
Yeah.
So-called creator-owned, and DC as well, much to Alan Moore's chagrin that it wasn't quite creator-owned.
Yeah.
But yeah, interesting times.
Yeah.
But you guys were fully encouraged at that time.
Oh, yeah.
To get crazy and draw two up as opposed to
We
one
could
and a
do
half
whatever
for
we
the-
wanted. There was no set standard on the Epic books. Well, part of it was that Archie Goodwin was the editor, who was
Yeah.
one of the best editors in comics, really, because he was always extremely encouraging, and he knew how to edit. He could spot anything that needed improvement and let you know without yelling. No, he was an excellent editor. Everyone wanted to work with Archie, so.
Great writer too.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I mean, that helps.
Yeah.
I mean, what he wrote, like the first 5 years of all the Warren magazines, with all the best artists that there were.
Yeah.
So.
And, yeah, we'll wrap up our part and we'll turn it over to
Oh.
Q&A and we'll rope the audience
We
in.
could just go on and on.
Yeah.
Good.
That's why I asked Steve more questions. Yeah.
One of the observations that I really enjoyed in here was, it does make sense, but Daredevil had been going on for so long after by the time I finally read Born Again, that you said, this could be the end, this could be like that last shot, Matt and Kara, and that feels like that's the end of the story, and that's.
Like they got the happy ending that superheroes never get in comics, and it is, they're in their plain clothes, they're walking down the street, and that emulates the Bob Dylan album cover, and it's just like, well, there's no way to improve on this, so why, like, there shouldn't be an issue 234, like, it should just stop. And then issue 234 came out, and of course I bought it, because I bought everything. And it was just dreadful, like, it was just like sort of a fill-in issue while they tried to figure out, like, well, how do we follow this?
Yeah.
So it just felt like just a complete throwback kind of pedestrian comic that would have been fine at another time, but following Born Again, it just felt, I don't know, it just felt like, all right, Daredevil should have stopped. And of course it shouldn't have, because there have been so many good stories since, like certainly the Anna Santi and John Romita Jr. stuff, like
That's great.
I like
completely
that stuff
justified,
a
it was
lot.
so good. Al Williamson inking John Romita Jr., like just gorgeous. So obviously the series shouldn't have ended, but for a while there, at the end of the story, it was like, yeah, that's all the Daredevil I ever need.
Yeah, no,
I thought it did take a while for them to get their
It
feet
did,
together.
yeah.
How, do you recall how far in advance they were working on those, where they realized, like, if
Right,
the last of this,
like 20 minutes ahead of
so the last issue of this comes in and they're like crying because it's so great, and then, crap, what would you guys
Yeah, who's around? Yeah.
call someone,
Yeah.
and they turn in filler,
Theoretically, they were working on the next issue,
but not the next arc. Not like today where
No.
things are, there's a writer's room and they're planning things out a year in advance.
no, they hadn't.
Well, and Frank was actually intending to stay on the book a while longer too. Like he originally came in and said, I'll do just this short run, and then I think the guys were having a good time doing this, but then David wanted to leave Marvel, and so Frank, sort of in solidarity, left with him, and they went off to do year one. But there is a script out there there was a two-part story that was going to follow this, where it was basically Daredevil meeting the devil, and it was Frank and Walt Simonson were going to do it.
Oh, wow.
And so the first script is, floating around online, and it's really good. And it's like, all right, well, that's how they should have followed Born Again. And so it was a bummer that never came to pass. I have tried, like in various capacities and jobs and such, I've had the opportunity to kind of try to bring these types of things to
Yeah.
life where I could. And so I tried for years to get that to happen. And Walter was into it, but there was only the one script, and so there were various reasons why you could just never sort of go back to that, and maybe that's for the best, but I would have
Frank
loved to.
didn't want to tell them how it ended.
Yeah.
Is there an outline for
If
the second
you
issue?
do.
There's not, no.
There's nothing.
No. So yeah, I think
Hmm.
it's just out there as a could have been, sort of like the Roger Stern, Frank Miller.
Yeah.
There
Doctor
are
Strange
a
series they
few
announced.
occasional really amazing stories that never got finished.
Yeah.
I mean, Barry Smith seemed to do tons of stuff that inexplicably were not finished.
There's a beautiful
set
Barry
or-
Smith Thing graphic novel that he did like 3/4 of.
Exactly.
Yeah, he sent me all those pages.
It's
We
like
were trying to
80
get that done
It's
too.
like
and
80% done.
yeah, and it's like done in '84, so it just peak Barry, you know.
And Bertie
inking.
Wrightson did a Hulk job that's just phenomenal.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
never finished. It was just sitting in a drawer up at Marvel for the longest time.
There would be such a good like
Even
the great
unfinished
unpublished book. I know.
Just put out a book of unfinished
Yeah.
stuff. That's fine.
I've tried that too.
It could be the next Marvel tryout book.
A lot
Just
of
do the
people
first
like
part
the
and
idea.
one
Lawyers
page.
don't love the idea as much, but yeah, it would be good.
Marvel lawyers are very efficient.
And then there's the John Byrne route where you just keep drawing X-Men and then print that as like fan fiction.
Yeah,
I must admit, that's strange.
It's strange that a guy did 31 issues just for fun with no intention of them being published. And now, of course, we're going to publish them. Yeah, 31 issues is a big commitment to just doing stuff because you want to. You know, there's no money involved, no
I
no
suspect
nothing.
he might have thought that eventually they would see the light and print them.
He said he actually really didn't because he
No.
never penciled the pages in ways that he never thought they would be inked. So, like, in us finishing this book now and putting it out officially, like, he's had to go back and kind of rework some of the sequences and some of the pages just to get it ready even for inking and coloring.
You should actually say the title and publisher, so if this is on
Oh, yeah, so
your
this-
YouTube.
Yeah. All right. So this John Byrne project is a few years ago. He started doing he wanted to see if he could still do X-Men the way he did X-Men back in the day. So he just drew a page, and then he had fun with it. And he drew another page, and suddenly he did 31 issues that were kind of
Next thing you know,
like him envisioning if he'd never left X-Men originally. So it was like
So
after
it picks up from his last issue.
picks up
basically,
from
right?
picks up from the death of Phoenix
Okay.
issues, except in this case Phoenix stays alive. So it's the original ending of the Phoenix saga, where Phoenix is lobotomized and
And it's his own fanfic webcomic.
yeah, and so he just penciled and wrote 31 issues, and so now we're officially getting them inked, and he actually inked about half the book, and colored and relettered and putting them out officially through Abrams in their comic arts line. So
Who else is inking it?
so John inked a little over half, and then there's a new inker named Paul Wills who's doing just amazing work. We got a bunch of different samples done. A lot of people that were established, some past inkers of John, some new people that wanted to take a shot. And the guy that really stood out was this guy Paul Wills. Yeah, I love what he's doing.
Did
So
John
it's,
have input into who-
oh, I mean, John was about the only one that had input. Yeah, you got to keep John happy when you're doing a John Byrne X-Men book. So it's weird to be John Byrne's editor on an X-Men book, but it's been pretty fun. In fact, this week, we just sent book 1 to the printer. So, yeah,
so
You and Louise
Pretty
Simon
cool.
said
So
there's
it
something to
picks
talk
up-
about.
yeah, we have lots to talk about.
it picks up after the not death of Phoenix.
Yes, yeah. The original ending for Shooter.
I do remember when that one was going through, it's like, oh, suddenly everyone put the brakes on and scrambling like crazy to come up with an ending.
And I get his logic, like she killed
Sure.
5 billion people, like maybe there should be some repercussions for that. Well, so if I could tell one last quick story about this, I was talking to Ralph Macchio, who was the editor on this book, and there's a bit at the end where the Avengers show up. It's in the 2 sort of Wild Nuke issues, but the Avengers show up and are never named, and they never need to be, because if you've ever read a comic with any of those characters, like Frank was so good at just a line of dialogue or a caption sort of defining the character to where you knew who they were. Plus, it was also Thor, Captain America, and Iron Man, who were pretty recognizable. There's a bit with Captain America where he tells Thor to either make it rain or make it stop raining. And the caption is something like, I say something like, even though I can quote it directly, it's like, a voice that could command a god and did. And you're like, well, yeah, that's Captain America, a guy with that commanding a presence. But as the story goes, Shooter said, absolutely not. Like, every comic is potentially somebody's first comic. You cannot not name those characters. We don't want to confuse any readers. You have to go in there and name Thor, name Iron Man, name Captain America. And as Ralph relayed the story, that, or as the story anyway exists, it's kind of become apocryphal, that Frank, said, absolutely not, like, we don't need to do that, you know exactly who they are, I mean, hell, Iron Man is wearing his Iron Man armor, like, it's Iron Man. But, so then as the story I've always heard it went, was that they added the captions to pacify the editor-in-chief, and then they printed the version that did not have those captions, and then when the book came out and Shooter supposedly threw a fit, they said, oh shit, the captions must have fallen off in print. And so that's always been the story, that Jim was just this like iron fist of making these demands that, to the story's detriment. And so I asked Ralph about that, and Ralph's like, that's all bullshit. It's like, Jim loved what they were doing in the book. Jim did not mandate anything. Jim didn't take that kind of heavy hand on this book. Jim let Frank, at that point, Frank Miller was Frank Miller, and so none of that is true, that Frank was encouraging about it. And so it was kind of great, because you hear a lot of,
this rumor come from?
I don't know. And I mean, there's always stories about, like, the editor-in-chief always gets blamed for stuff. As a former editor-in-chief, I can confirm that is sometimes so. And, Jim got blamed for a lot of things back then, and, I wasn't there to speak to the right or wrongness of them. I'm sure there were things where the creator felt he overstepped. But anyway, in this case, I think people wanted to believe that this was a big bad Jim Shooter story, and it was really nice somehow to hear that it wasn't true, that like he respected what they were doing and he didn't have those kind of dictates. And so, I don't know, it was just one of those things like when you dig in and you talk to people involved in the books, that you kind of get the real story behind the stories that have become accepted as fact. And so, yeah, I don't know, it made me happy to know that in this case, like, that wasn't Jim's heavy hand.
Well, one of the things that I know, like you said, Jim wanted every issue to be told as if it was somebody's first time reading the book. And I know at the beginning, Frank sort of resisted that, but then he really got into that introduction moment.
Oh, yeah, defining his powers.
And
yeah.
Saying who it was and running through like 2 or 3 pages of Daredevil doing his thing.
Yeah.
So that, so you could remember who he was.
Yeah.
But Frank got really good at it, so it became a new feature.
Yeah.
It's funny bringing up that issue with the Avengers showing up, because I remember it, and I remember also not caring about the Avengers at that point.
Yeah, right. What are they doing here?
Comics.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember they appeared in Secret Wars or whatever that I had read, and like I didn't buy the Avengers. I didn't. But like specifically the panel with Iron Man standing there in issue 232 or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, it just sticks out like a sore thumb that like silver and red Iron Man is standing there. Like, dude, what are you doing in my Daredevil book? Like,
I feel like they shoehorn.
it felt like somebody told him to put those specific Avengers. Like, Captain America made sense, and it's got the nice resolution with Captain America standing over the desk.
Yeah.
Like, with Nuke on the desk and all of that, and it's like, okay, Captain America I'd buy, but like why is Iron Man standing there in that one panel?
Yeah, why is Thor making it rain? Like, they seem so out of place.
They didn't need to name them. It's like, what are you doing to my book?
Yeah.
Why they would put it in?
No, I mean, I think it was just an escalation of the storyline. Like, it had finally gotten big enough that this
Kingpin
private battle
Paul,
had spilled out into the city where...
It's like 1 page or 2 pages of them, like, it's besides Captain America.
Yeah.
It felt weird.
I think it was just that Nuke was finally, like, the battle had gotten so out of control that, the A-team needed to step in to calm things down. Daredevil clearly couldn't handle it himself.
You can almost even sense it in the drawings. Like, Mazzucchelli's drawings of them seem like he was on the phone when he did it. Like those particular characters are like, all right, I did those panels. Like,
Yeah.
Like, they're a little rougher.
It was
they're
not where his
little,
interest
like,
lied.
Yeah.
Perfunctory.
You mentioned that Peter Parker was cut from the Daily Bugle.
Yeah, there's the scene of, and it's an amazing scene of the whole Daily Bugle, like the whole open office kind of setting that newspapers have. So Mazzucchelli was so good at the details on the desks, you get all these little things. And there's a reporter walking down the hall, and it was originally drawn as Peter Parker, and that he had to remove because, I don't know if it was Shooter or who it was, but it was deemed that was too sort of Marvel Universe proper, that we need to keep this as its own little self-contained thing. And so it just became some other reporter, but it was originally just Peter Parker in the background. And I think I think Ralph said it was something along the lines of, well, Peter Parker's in the scene, then Spider-Man should be in the book. And Frank's like, well, he's not a part of the book, he shouldn't be in the book, but he does work at the Daily Bugle.
Yeah, I mean,
And so
it's-
they just
it's
changed
right.
it, so, yeah.
Meanwhile, Iron Man.
Right, yeah.
Well, because otherwise you get into that storytelling dilemma of why doesn't Superman just show up
Yeah,
and
totally.
fix everything?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
If Spider-Man's there, this is going down.
Yeah, I just
Yeah,
like that.
why he sit that one out?
But even like when he faced off against Captain America, Daredevil's wearing like the V-neck sweater, you know, like
Yeah.
it's not like a whole superhero battle kind of thing. Like they resisted all the easy tropes throughout this, which I think is what made it stand out originally. Was like the whole thing about the secret identity wasn't
Yep.
just undone as quickly as it always was. You know, usually it was Superman gaslighting Lois Lane with a robot, or Peter Parker dressing up Hobie Brown as Spider-Man, and everything is restored in one issue. This is just like there's no easy fix for his identity getting out in the world. So I think that's
There's
what.
no easy fix for it, and even Captain America, it seems like he kind of gets it's a crappy situation.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
he knows he's Daredevil, he knows he's Matt Murdock, and they don't like make a big deal out of it.
Yeah.
Like, it's almost like he feels sorry for him, like that he's been outed.
And, yeah, I have audience questions.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So you mentioned, both of you, that Frank was doing layouts in the early issues. I've never heard that.
I was guessing at that, but
Is that, oh, yeah, that's what I wanted to know. Is there like some?
Well, it's like,
I don't think it's
when he
clear
was
enough.
working with Klaus, at a certain point, he stopped drawing it, and was just doing thumbnails.
Right.
Then Klaus would just follow Frank's breakdowns, doing all of the artwork himself.
Right.
You know, he'd worked with Frank so long that it looked the same.
one of the giveaways is it says it's credited as artwork by, or I think it's story and art by Frank Miller and David
Is that
Mazzucchelli.
every issue,
It's
or
not
just-
delineated who did
Not
what.
early on, I think it was Frank being comfortable with this new kid.
Yeah.
Because he originally planned to come back and write and draw the book, but then I think he saw some of what Mazzucchelli was doing. He's like, well, I'm not kicking that guy off the book. And so, it was like that transitional period of making sure that he was up to the task, and then I think he very
And
quickly
then he
saw that he was.
was, so-
Yeah, he
Yeah.
absolutely was, yeah.
And you talked to both of them when you did this, or?
Did I talk to them?
Yeah, did you?
No, I reached out to, I didn't reach out to David because I've seen enough of David not wanting to talk about this stuff anymore.
Doesn't like to know.
No, and I reached out to Frank,
Been there, done that.
but then I think a book like this is probably better not talking to the creators, because it's basically like me sort of looking at all the reasons why I think the book is resonant, and I don't know if including the guys who made it suddenly makes it, I don't know, like, then I feel like I need to be sycophantic or something like that, where instead of just kind of being honest. Not that I had anything bad to say anyway, but I sent him a list of questions and then decided, well, that doesn't really fit what this book is, so.
Well, it's almost a documentary versus a commentary.
Yeah,
At that
yeah.
point too, like, are you trying to be a historian with it, or are you trying to offer
Yeah.
resident commentary on how it affected?
Yeah.
I don't think Frank would have had that much to say anyway.
No, but without David being involved, it would have also felt one-sided to have talked to one guy, not the other, so I just opted out of talking to either one. So I thought talking to Ralph Macchio as the guy who had to wrangle that team was probably the most interesting conversation about it, so.
And he never gets interviewed, so.
No, but he never stops being interviewed once he starts either, so I got a great input on the entire Marvel history during that period, as well as some good anecdotes about this.
He's the longest employee at Marvel.
Yeah.
He's been there longer than anybody.
Wow.
He's still there?
He's still there. Oh, I think he just retire?
He retired, but he's still doing,
He still shows up.
custom and specialty books and stuff with them, yeah.
I mean, I think he's been there since like the early 70s.
Every regime change.
Junior
Yeah.
assistant copy boy,
Survived.
so.
Yeah.
Can I ask a dumb question?
There are
No
dumb
dumb questions.
Okay, so it's the 70s, and you're in San Francisco, and the bosses are in New York, and the people that are doing the drawing and the inking are all over the place. Were there carrier pigeons that would take it back and forth, or does it just go through the snail mail?
These were the days before Federal Express came along, so was the post office. Always sent it special delivery, never lost anything, amazingly enough.
I like to picture you guys just doing road trips,
Yeah.
across the country.
That
like here
did
in
happen
Logan.
occasionally, like, there's always the, well, the plane must have gone down, I don't know where those pages are.
Yeah.
A lot of excuses, but yes.
What was on the page, when you opened your package, what was on the page already when you would open up a marker?
Well, I had the advantage of working with pencilers. Jim Starlin and Frank Brunner both lived in Oakland, so I would just go to Oakland and pick up the pages myself. I mean, part of it is that it saved an awful lot of time, without having to send it to New York, and they send it back, the regular routine was the pages would be penciled. You'd send it to Marvel, they would send it to the letterer, he'd send it back to Marvel, Marvel would send it to the inker. But since we all lived in the same neighborhood, Tom Orzakowski was doing the lettering, he lived in Oakland as well. So eliminating all of that mailing and stuff saved a lot of time.
How long did it take to do a book when everything was going back and forth in the mail?
Well, my part, usually you had like 2 weeks. As an inker, 2 weeks was.
Did Tom Orzakowski get the pages before you handled them, or what was the order?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. He lived like 3 blocks from Starlin, it was easy to get
So
stuff.
there's no oversight.
Or Alan Weiss was living there,
Yeah.
he pitched in a lot.
Yeah, they wouldn't see it until the end then. Nobody was
everyone
looking at
lived
it
in
in
Oakland.
between.
Yes, it did make the editors a little bit nervous. That they didn't see the book until it was completely finished.
Were there other hubs like this around the country at that point? I mean, there was New York, like, there were a lot of people living there, but like
Like a Chicago too?
There wasn't,
Yeah,
there wasn't a situation like that going on anywhere else.
Mhm.
Starlin took it upon himself to just do it that way.
Jim Lee tells this great story about the early days of Image. He set up the company in La Jolla in San Diego, and they were kind of deadline challenged from early on.
From the very beginning.
Yeah, and so he said they actually debated moving the company to, it was somewhere in Texas, might have been Austin, because they found the last FedEx plane, like the FedEx plane that left at the last possible minute, so they could like get their pages done. But once you would adjust to being late on a schedule, like you never hit it anyway, so it would not have worked. But I thought that was funny that they thought about like, well, we're not going to be able to get caught up, so what's the latest plane we can still catch, and try to have some semblance of a schedule.
Berkeley Breathitt has stories about inking and almost falling asleep in a cab, like on the way
Oh,
to
really?
the airport. He figured out his editor could come to the airport, hand it off, and then he would try not to fall asleep at the wheel driving back after.
I remember working on jobs where it's like FedEx is coming at 6:30. That's the last.
Yeah.
And I remember finishing up a book for Eclipse Comics in that way. We've got an hour and a half to ink 5 pages. Let's see what we can do.
I must have, God, I remember doing that when I first started for like Oni and Dark Horse. Like FedEx was still the way to get it. I mean, I didn't scan anything. I sent physical artwork.
Pre-digital.
It was all pre-digital.
Bill Amon, who does Fox.
I knew when my FedEx guy came in Burbank. Yeah, no, I had it down to a science.
And now there's no excuses.
Bill Amon, who draws Foxtrot, actually moved to Kansas City because his syndicate was there.
Oh,
yeah.
Saved him.
I can see
Saved him
that.
that much time.
Yeah.
But that whole
Hallmark Mafia.
yeah.
It's a whole thing. Kansas City.
Actually, Portland was the city that had a lot of
Yeah.
cartoonists.
Yeah.
This is a question for Steve. I know you did 2 issues of Daredevil right before Miller started. You inked Gene Colan.
Yes.
How was that?
I loved inking Gene Colan's pencils. I had inked,
Howard the
I
Duck,
think
right?
10 or 11 issues of his Howard. He was my favorite penciler to ink because it was just, the pages were so beautifully drawn. love that stuff.
I thought your 2 issues stood out.
Thank
Just
you,
like,
thank you.
Klaus Jensen was inking it too with.
Klaus is pretty good.
Right. But he was switching off between Infantino and Gil Kane, I think.
Yeah, Klaus he's a terrific inker. I mean, I followed all of those people trying to pick up hints
Right,
as to
right.
how to approach these things.
And Steve did an issue, it was 5 issues after Born Again ended also.
Oh,
He and Sal did an issue that was like
Sal
right at the
Buscema.
start of Andy's run.
wow.
I inked several issues of Sal Buscema on Marvel Team Up, which was a lot of fun.
Yeah, the Shield.
Those were, Sal did layouts, so I did finished art, and I took it upon myself to sort of emulate the style of whatever new guest person would show up, so.
You almost inked him on Secret Wars 2 also, which speaking of
Yes.
unpublished, there's that whole first issue that Sal penciled that.
Yes, yes. I actually still have the first cover. Sal drew it, and I was supposed to ink it, and they said, "Stop." We're changing our mind, as they did often. And they got John Byrne too.
Well, it's funny because the way that story goes is that shooter or whoever decided that the Sal's cover didn't work the way he wanted it to, so Byrne basically did the same cover just to prove to Jim that what Sal did was fine.
But Sal did was fine.
Yeah,
But
totally. And his pages for the first issue look great.
Jim went through so many changes on covers. I remember the first issue of X Factor. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
it seemed like it went through 12 different variations that just could not decide.
Rom also.
Rom.
Yeah.
I remember Mike Nasser, as he was called at that point in time, drew one. Jim didn't like, and Mike got really annoyed and ripped it up in his office.
So somebody take those pieces back together,
Then
you
they
can
take
find
that.
that. Yeah, well, because that he
It's
drew.
a fine cover.
It's a
but
fine
weird,
cover
but
with Jesus in the background, and he wouldn't remove Jesus,
It
and
was
so,
his
yeah.
religious period.
Yeah.
Which he's still on, but.
What was he known as after he was Mike Nasser?
Say that again?
You said he was known as Mike Nasser
Oh,
at the time. What did he
now
do?
he's Michael Netzer, so.
Oh,
A
okay.
minor change, but
Huh.
I think that was his original name. He has a complicated backstory, as we say in the comics. I think he was from Lebanon originally, but moved to Detroit, grew up there. Now he's wandering around Israel. Things are tense, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
So, last I heard, he's still alive. That's good.
Huh.
Did you ever see Frank or David while they were?
I've never
working
met
with us, or-
David.
Okay.
I've known Frank, met him in 1978. So, see him every now and again.
But you didn't hear anything from him directly as this was coming together, or?
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Well, Ralph said they talked very little, Frank and David, when they were doing this.
Oh, none too, oh, well.
It was
okay.
amazing that it's
Which
it's
makes
so
sense.
cohesive.
I mean,
but-
you know, once they were comfortable working together.
Yeah.
You know, everyone's just sailing along.
Yeah.
A lot of it, like, you think like the penciler and inker are sleeping in a big double bed.
Oh, yeah, totally, yeah.
They had the rare
Okay.
magic nightgowns and everything.
Yeah.
No, it's.
So they were randomly just kind of put together by an editor, you think?
Well, David was already the artist on the book before, and so when Frank wanted to come back,
I see.
he liked what David was doing, so he wanted David to stay on.
It's funny, cause like you said, whatever his name is,
Bulanati, yeah.
that stuff doesn't look so great, so if I was Frank and I saw that, I'd be like, oh.
But David
No,
started
yeah,
inking his stuff
right.
around 214,
Yeah, that stuff's
so,
beautiful.
yeah, yeah. It was just, yeah, it was just worlds above.
A couple of issues.
Yeah, yeah.
It's kind of remarkable that a writer artist, somebody who's renowned as a writer artist like Frank,
Yeah.
was so encouraging and so hands off. Well, to a degree, probably. Working with a team like
He
that.
didn't really want to literally draw everything. I mean, he was fine with not actually drawing it, so. Cause it's a lot of work.
It is a lot, it is, I mean, we know it's a lot of work, but like the writer-artist in my head, like I would have such a hard time
Letting go.
pushing
Yeah.
that. And I work with teams of people, but like, on something that you can do everything yourself, right, and draw it, like comics are so specific like that. To be able to, like, that's a very specific callus to build up early in your career, to be able to share
Yeah.
that kind of work.
I think after a while, Frank liked the idea of collaborating with other people. I remember he did an issue of, was it Daredevil with John Buscema?
Yeah.
Mhm.
219.
I mean, I didn't find it as interesting, but, you know, he was certainly willing to do it.
Yeah.
Hey, Steve, do you happen to know anything that happened during the Dark Knight between Frank and Klaus? Like what?
Yes.
Because I know
We're gonna talk about
that. He only
it.
needs about half of that stuff, right?
I visited Frank after he had penciled the first issue. And I knew immediately this thing was great. It's amazing, you'd hear from DC that they weren't sure, they didn't know how this stuff would go over, but it seemed obvious to me. But Frank was stylistically going in one direction. Klaus was not in, Frank wanted simpler stuff than what Klaus was doing. I mean, Klaus sort of has one way of approaching stuff, and, you know, it was just stylistic differences between the two of them. If they worked out.
Did they? I know other people that ended up inking. Well, Frank redid a lot of it himself. That's
Yeah.
That cost
Yeah.
reading.
Book 3.
And 4, I think. And then I actually heard that Todd McFarlane inked some of it. And Bill Sienkiewicz inked some of it.
I've heard that, but
I can see
I've
that.
never
Yeah,
seen
the Todd
That
thing
or
seems
surprise
like-
Todd
yeah.
seems.
Seems like it would be noticeable.
Yeah.
No, that's a good source told me.
I mean, that had to be tough, because at that point, he started inking himself, like with Ronan, so then to go back and hand the pages over to somebody else again, probably was hard for him to.
There was a bit of resistance from the editors that they didn't want a radical art change in the middle of the story.
It was radical to me when I saw the next issue. I was like,
Mm.
what happened?
Yeah.
I love Klaus's, his stuff on that book is amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, I do like what Frank's done. I mean, his stuff is so curious. But I can understand how, generally they prefer the traditional look. It took a long time for the companies to get over the idea that all the characters had to look exactly the same all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, from way back when, like Jack Kirby drawing Superman, and all of the faces were changed.
Yeah.
It was rather pointless and never.
Oh, Romita did that to just about everybody, didn't he?
Well, that was an in-house kind of thing. They had a certain idea of how the covers should look,
Yeah.
and he was the guy right there. It's usually either him or Marie Severin.
Right.
I mean, visiting Marvel Comics, that was always a high point of the visit, listening to Marie Severin and John Romita, well, being humorous.
One of the other books I wanted to do was a Not Brand X book, just so I could talk about Marie.
Right.
Marie is another one who I feel like, even though she's been sung to a degree, still feels far too unsung for how good she was at everything.
She was fabulous. She
Yeah.
had a very dark sense of humor. One of the things was, she was always, well, I wouldn't say making light of all kinds of things, and there were, her drawings were all over the office of caricatures of everyone up there.
The pre-internet days when you could not worry about those things surfacing.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I'm kinda curious. You'll say yes, so you can answer this, but, cause we're a little bit older than you guys. But when you first picked up, Born Again and Year One, did you know Tote? Were you familiar with Alex Tote?
I was familiar with him just
Yeah.
through reprints, but I hadn't
Yeah.
embraced Toth yet. It's funny because I was just thinking about Toth when
Yeah.
you guys were talking about Dark Knight, because I feel like
Mhm.
that was, like when you referenced kind of pulling back and
No question.
simplifying to a certain extent, like, and obviously Mazzucchelli is
Right.
channeling.
No question. I mean, I was a DC kid and I was reading Toth Black Canary, and
Yeah.
when I picked that up, I was like, oh man,
Yeah.
you know?
Now I go back and like I've got a Toth checklist where I'm at, you know,
Right.
digging through bins at conventions,
Yeah.
like the Berkeley Comic Show or wherever that's just comics,
Yeah.
looking for Toth.
I've tried for
packages that
years
aren't-
to collect Hot Wheels.
I have
Oh.
no.
Yeah, but they've never
I have
been,
doubles
they've
of
never
a
put
couple.
out a nice.
There's no collection
Yeah.
of them.
No.
yeah.
But my only exposure to Toth at the time when I was reading this was, because I was more of a Marvel kid, was the Super Friends, like the.
I mean, yeah, that was huge,
Yeah.
that treasury,
Yeah.
yeah.
And mostly just from his lettering, like his lettering in the back of that book stood out to me even more than the art.
Yeah.
Lettering is just gorgeous.
Yeah,
It's,
for sure.
I mean, working, because my career started like late teens, both in comics and animation at the same time, and I was working when I was 19 for Chuck Jones, and I was at Hanna-Barbera when I was 21. So
Right.
like the Toth stuff was
Right.
around,
Mhm.
and I could, like, you could still go find model sheets and
Yeah.
So
that
at
kind of stuff.
Hanna-Barbera, did they have like all of their stuff that you could just check out?
There was,
I mean,
I still have cell vinyl from their paint closet that I'll shake up and use. I mean, from the Flintstones.
It still
But, like,
works.
Yeah, cell vinyl won't go bad. I mean, it probably has mold in it, but yeah, you could go and, they didn't really have like a formal archive, but there were areas that you could find binders, and there was stuff around if you cared to dig. Most people didn't care to dig. But there were a number of us that did. We found a good chunk of stuff.
So I ended up with photocopies of all that stuff
Yeah,
from those that were interested.
yeah. I mean, that stuff's gold. That, Doug Wildey stuff.
Mm.
There's Kirby stuff. I mean, there's some, like, the people that worked for Hanna-Barbera.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like,
Amazing.
the stuff that you could find. And was probably our real first exposure with Super Friends.
Yeah.
Right.
Before we even knew that's what we were looking at.
Yeah. Interesting.
It was like when I first was reading his earlier run on Daredevil, like, I didn't know who Will Eisner was, and I didn't know how much he borrowed from Eisner, so.
Eisner too, yeah.
And same with like Lone Wolf and Cub, like, I never saw Lone Wolf and Cub when Ronin came out. So it was kind of exciting to have him like be the sort of gateway to then discovering those things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lone Wolf and Cub wasn't even available when Ronin came out. Like here.
No.
I mean, I remember the comic shop owner that I probably bought these issues from. Like,
When did Dark Horse start collecting?
It was probably like 84.
Because they all had Miller covers.
Yeah.
The first
12, I think.
12 were
and then-
Miller, and then
then
it was
Sienkiewicz,
Savage, and then it
and
was
then
Wagner.
Yeah.
Right.
And those were all first
Yeah.
comic, right? And
Oh,
right,
the first
those-
two before Dark Horse?
Yeah,
Dark Horse
they were
was
like
good.
oversized, and I remember they were the same size as like Dark Knight Returns,
Yeah,
like that size.
Yeah.
And I remember the shop owner, like, I mean, I was too young for the shop owner to be giving me that stuff. But he's like, as soon as Lone Wolf and Cub 1 came out, I was like,
Here, kid.
what is this? And I was in, you know.
I was a big X-Men fan when I was 12, and my shop owner was like, hey kid, you like Wolverine, you're gonna love Faust. And he gave me a first issue of Faust, and I was like, my parents see this, my comic collecting days are done.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great.
Before they arrested people.
Yeah, it was quite a leap from Wolverine to Faust. though.
For whatever reason, I could get away with bringing home Lone Wolf and Cub, but I could not get away with bringing home Electra Assassin. Like, that
Oh,
was not
interesting.
gonna fly,
Really?
not just those covers.
And then you went on to do an Electra book of your
And then I
own.
went on to do Electra. Although purposefully at the time, they were like very big on like Craig Horn and
Yeah.
over and out Electra, so I purposely put her in a trench coat
Yeah.
throughout the whole series.
Well, that's no fun.
Do you have any, I guess,
Electra stories? No.
Toad stories?
Oh, probably shouldn't tell them.
We'll turn the camera off.
He was was a difficult man to deal with. Loved his artwork. I did get to see, I went to visit him one time with Dave Stevens and Ken Stacy, and he had that entire Hot Wheels issue. Offered to sell it to us at a very high price. Worth it, but not something I could afford.
Yeah.
Had that entire issue that he wrote and drew himself, which is, you know, to my mind, one of the best comics.
Yeah.
I do have a page of the Black Canary run. So, anyway, always loved his work.
Yeah.
But he could be difficult.
Harlan Ellison tells some good Toth stories, and they all involve
Well, that's
him throwing Toth out of his house, and there's such.
Those would have been good
Yeah,
conversations to
yeah.
watch.
and both of them have
Those
stories
two.
where people were
Yeah, yeah.
thrown out of the house.
Yeah.
I mean, he can be challenging.
Someone made a little documentary about him it's on YouTube, it's really good.
Toth.
Yeah, about Toth.
There's a lot of good comic documentaries on Tubi now. If you just like, I was like, there's a Chris Claremont X-Men documentary, like just all of these comic book documentaries that I just didn't know
Just popped
existed.
up.
Yeah, they just pop up on Tubi.
There was apparently a new documentary on, was it Kincaid, Painter of Light? I mean, I first met him when he was working for Ralph Bakshi on Fire and Ice, doing backgrounds, before he went off and painted with light. Painted with light.
Created the empire.
No question.
Printed with light.
The mom would have no notes.
Yeah, I think we've gone like an hour and a half here. Could probably go another
Yeah.
hour
Just
and a
talking
half,
about
just
old
talking
nerd
about
stuff, yeah.
throw out a 3-digit
Yeah.
number. and-
Yeah. I will say, if anybody wants to see Mazzucchelli's evolution from what it was here in Born Again, to what it became like Asteros Polyp, he did one issue of, final thing he did at Marvel was he did this issue of Marvel Fanfare,
Oh my God, the angel issue.
the Angel issue,
Oh,
and
that
his
was
artwork is so distinct and cool and so different from this that you can really see like, that was like the real transition from doing superhero stuff to where you saw that and you're like, oh, he has no more interest in doing this kind of stuff. He's off to do bigger, different things, and it's really, he inked it himself, yeah, I think he inked it, colored it, like it's a full on. just-
All right, what issue?
That's an Anna Senti.
Oh God, it's issue
story, isn't
40,
it?
I think.
Oh, it's
I think it is issue
Yeah,
40.
yeah.
It's late, yeah.
I think it was recently collected in one of the Epic collections, but it is one of those that was just like this beautiful thing toward the tail end of Marvel Fanfare that has just kind of disappeared, but it is totally worth checking out, because it's such a unique style.
Yeah, each of those issues are kind of an art object on their own.
Yeah,
But that one in particular, like, just seems like you had Anna designing it cover to cover.
Yeah.
That was really cool.
yeah.
And that's the bridge between.
That is, yeah, I mean, you could totally see where he was going with,
Was that after year one?
It was after year one, yeah.
Kind of the last.
Did he do that?
Final word.
He must have done that before City of Glass.
Yeah, yeah. I think.
Where was Rubber Blanket in there? Was that?
I think
after-
those
after
both
City
came
of Glass.
after,
All of that stuff was after.
yeah.
Okay.
Rubber Blanket was 91.
Yeah, it was 90s for sure. I
Yeah.
guess, yeah.
Yeah, so the
But-
Fanfare issue is probably 80.
Oh,
I think
okay,
it's
so
like
that's
88,
before.
88, 89.
Yeah.
Somewhere later.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably 88.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a.
Boy, I
Really
guess I
cool.
don't remember Marvel Fanfare being that early. So it was early 80s when that.
It started in
came out.
82, I think, yeah.
Up through like 88, 89.
Yeah.
I wonder if he colored that too. Because
He did.
that, I
Yeah.
was gonna say, that is kind of the same palette as that 228
Yeah, totally.
issue. Like,
Yeah.
it's brighter, it's more,
Mhm.
not saccharine, but like, definitely intentional.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, good segment. That's a good issue.
Well, great. Let's give everybody a
Yeah.
round of applause.
Making that book.
Thanks for coming out. Chris will be signing books up front.